So, in this episode, I am excited to talk about a topic that really gets me elated. And I think it so naturally pairs with the great work and the coming to finding your feet in the process of transformation and finding your feet in a way that you actually start to enjoy the co-creative process in a way that regrounds you into the curiosity you had as a child. So there's so many parallels between the mystery of being a child and the mystery of unfolding experience. And it makes sense to me that it is paired with the transformational process. And it makes sense that it returns as a way of knowing your experience on a really nuanced level. So in the beginning, I kind of saw this as esoteric intelligence. And then looking at the term esoteric, it's got lots of Latin derivatives that talk about hidden, concealed, reclaimed, or pulled back almost. And that didn't really fit it does in a sense when you blow the whole thing wide open and you think about the initial connection to source and the initial conception of everything. There was one thing and then there were two. When we think of how an infant grows, it's singular cell, like split and split and split. And so it sort of is a recapturing or a hidden aspect because the thing that is hidden is the oneness of it all. So I get that, but I think we have such a connotation with hidden and shrouded. And so it almost has a nefarious feeling as opposed to the grand game, which is that we are all connected and we all are sort of the same material. And when we look at it on a physics level, we really are. And we look at it on an energetic level, everything is energy. And there's, a singular source of energy. That's what I believe in. And I think it's supported by the science. So very interesting ways of looking at it. But I started to land on words that felt a little better to me. So I really like ethereal and etheric knowledge. I like mystical. I prefer looking at it like occult even felt a little bit better because it was unexplainable. It was, it really pointed to the supernatural and the mystical aspect. But I also like the aestheticism idea in that aestheticism, beauty for the sake of beauty and really the aesthetic, the vibe. And really when we talk about an aesthetic, we really have to open our concept right up to account for it being a vibe, right? And this is why I'm thankful to be around in, post 2000s, because we really start talking about vibe more. It becomes common practice to talk about vibe. We understand when people are like, oh, that vibe is off, or that's not my vibe, or this is my vibe. This is my aesthetic. We really are playing with a very malleable concept that forces people to let go of labeling and sort of boxing in what it is we're actually talking about. It's like we're pointing to the thing without pointing to the thing in its units and its parts. We're not overly dissecting anything. We're actually zooming out and looking at the whole and talking about, well, what are all these little moving parts pointing to, or what is the creation they make up? And that requires us to take a little bit of a leap away from language. We're going into an area where language does not service the feeling or the vibe around what we're talking about, which I think is so exciting. To me, this is I'm smiling as I'm recording it. It is such a endearing aspect of being human. So esoteric doesn't quite fit for me. I like mystical. So basically the aspect that you have to deduce for yourself. It's the part that you have to have a lot of self-trust. It's the undiscovered, if you will, aspect of what you're looking at. It's the part that we can't put language to and we wouldn't want to. And once we sort of let go of the guardrails of our experience a little bit and we loosen our grip on what it has to be and sort of trade in expectation for enamor or expectation for being dazzled we start to get to really experience this more subtle nuances, the etheric qualities of life, and it becomes so much more, I would say, buzzing with life. And like, this is where I get into the mystical and supernatural, but I would argue, even though it's supernatural, it's supra, I would say, or it's like, it's part of what nature actually is. When you start to really look at supernatural, nature includes this part of the process. This is like the hitch moment right before blooming. This is the germination below the surface. This is those moments where we don't necessarily have evidence and we hold off long enough to be wowed by the transformation. This is the butterfly when it is soupy and it is holding this form etherically that it knows it is going to become, but it isn't yet there, and it just rides it out until it appears. And so this is like the etheric blueprint. The caterpillar doesn't always know. I read this really cute thing that talked about, how other caterpillars see caterpillars, like, don't go into that chrysalis. I don't know what happens when you go in there, but nobody comes out, because they don't necessarily notice a butterfly coming out, or they don't know, like, you go in and somebody else comes out. So, like, don't do it. Like, and it's funny how if butterflies or if caterpillars looked at the process like that, if they had a consciousness that allowed them to become fearful and resistant to transformation, we might not have butterflies. And how funny is that humans with this complex ability to analyze and also become fearful, resist transformation in certain ways. And I just find it funny, and I find it endearing. So when I talk about supernatural, I feel like it's, mystical, it still doesn't even do it justice. I like the unlanguaged, the inarticulate aspect, like the feelings of orgasm, for instance. Like, how do you describe that? Like, I can use the description of like coming up and over the edge of a roller coaster, but that's still metaphor. It's like this. We can't actually say what it is fully, but we can say what it's like a crescendo of feeling until a burst happens. Like, again, we're trying, in this really peculiar, or we're trying in this way to language something that really is one of the gifts of life. Like, these things are the gifts of life, that they become so, we're stunned out of language. They become so rapturous that we can't form around them. And thank goodness, because I'm sure it would become yet something else that becomes benign if we were able to form language around it. It's like the heart-bursting love you experience for another person when you connect so deeply that you are aligned in that moment. You have no doubt your energy is connected and intertwined with theirs, and you feel it. It's like heart-bursting, like those moments that we can't really put language to. It's something greater. It's the coalescence, the coherence, the smashing of two waves together, that moment. This is why I like the word rapture so much. I feel like it creates like a salivation in my mouth when I think about it. It's savory, right? So this to me is the beautiful point of co-creation. It's the handoff point. It's the painting of the two fingers meeting in that space in between where there has to be a leap. This is the new neural pathways that we create in our mind by interrupting an old, well-worn habit or pattern when we create a new, and there has to be a jump from one to another, one synapse to another. There has to be the moment at the top of the roller coaster when your bum lifts off the seat and gravity is suspended momentarily. It's also the point of imagination and the point of interpretation. When we let go just a little bit, we let go of what our preconceived notions are. We let go of the rails, and we trust that the momentum that we have built up in our bodies and our minds and our knowledge, our wisdom, our embodied knowledge, our embodied wisdom at this point, when we trust that and we have to make a mental leap, it's the hypothesis point. Like, it's the moment that we take a leap from what is known into the next version of finding out what is true or what is known or what is potential. And the word potential is just like teeming with life when you think about it that way. And so I think this reminds us of the effervescence of life. It reminds us to not only enjoy the mystery, but to bask in it for a little while. It's why we came here. Like, if we saw all the mechanisms and mechanics behind it, if we knew it all, it wouldn't feel the same. So it's the magic that is the unknowable. And we wouldn't need to know everything if we really, really just trusted, right? And this is where this trust is so beautiful. To me, this is like when we tip from surviving into thriving. This is where, this magical aspect kind of brings you alive again into that childlike curiosity, that wonder. It's like trusting the perpetual unfoldment. And that I feel like is the gift of creation. The gift of God is the fact that, and I say God liberally, like God, source, whatever you think is the main component behind this, whether you think it's just like a black hole that's spouting out energy molecules and that's what creates everything, or if you believe, in source as this personified figure because that's how your brain accepts the understanding of it. Whatever you think is the orchestration, the divine conductor, the mouth of matter, whatever you think is behind it, I think one of the most beautiful aspects of it is that we are here because of it, and we are not nothing because of it. The fact that we even exist, that we're not in the void, the fact that we are here living and we continue to live, and the fact that we even evolve and progress, like that nature safeguards against everything by constantly evolving, and this push for existence is like such an incredible thing to me. And that allows me to have the deepest trust that we are meant to be here. There is purpose because we keep showing up and we keep waking up every day. And so this is the most beautiful aspect of me, that there's something with enough energy that can constantly, perpetually produce new experience, so that when the mystery eventually unfolds for us in one area, like effervescence, like a bubble finally popping in an aha moment, and this epiphany. I love the word epiphany, yet another, we didn't know something and suddenly we know it. You could be working at a math problem for quite some time and not be able to see it differently. And then something opens up, something decongests, and it lands and you get it. And the day I realized that we don't have any control over when that moment arrives, we can practice. But the perfection of something landing is really beyond our control to a degree, I believe. And so this is what I think is the incredible aspect of living, is that we get this coalescence of what was previously unknown and being reached for to achieve lands, and we know about it. And what's really beautiful is that there's then something else that can unfold even deeper. The game doesn't end. We don't stop at that moment experiencing. It's like knowing that once you figure out about Santa and you get the mechanics behind it, knowing that there are an infinite number of mysteries to follow, which is incredible. I don't know if you guys can hear this bird. It's just absolutely wonderful. And so to me, that's the absolute benevolence and beauty of existing, is that the unfoldment is always happening, and that source, and whatever you call that aspect, that unknowable aspect, is always one step ahead. I think of this like a dance partner, like to know that you're in a perpetual dance. You don't have to worry that it's going to dead stop at some point, that it just keeps moving in motion, and it's always one step ahead. So you always have the delight of experiencing unfoldment. There's no stagnation. There's just perpetual rebirth. This again is enough proof for me to believe that death is not the end, that death is always accompanied by rebirth. And I see this in nature. I see this all around me. So I have no fear that this is not a truth. I know it deeply in my bones to be a truth. I see rebirth happen perpetually. And that is one of the most beautiful gifts, I believe, of life, that it truly is this dance, which we agree to. We agree to the mystery. And the mystery leads us for the sheer fun of it. This is where I get my deep my deep optimism and hope and trust in life, my deep enjoyment for being here, even despite what I see around me and the things that we experience, I can hold both. I hold that. I see that. I don't ignore it. I don't pretend it's not there. I know it's there. And I also see the grander design of the whole thing, in that there's always a mystery to unfold. There's always one dance step ahead. There's always another corner. I could see the corner coming. And once I get around the corner, the mystery is revealed to me, and it's very exciting. And I get to really lean into the fact that there's always going to be more mystery around the corner, which for me is exciting because I'm not fearful of it. And I have a greater feeling around death not being final. So, I mean, I love this. And this is, when I talk about the spirit aspects, this is what I mean. My connection to that, my communion to that, my coherence with that. And that's what I'm building, right? The leap is just the making of the shift. It's that little moment between what was and what's going to be, and the leap. That could be the now moment if you want to really look at it that way. But it's that beautiful hitch moment, that bum off the seat at the top of the roller coaster, that takes your breath away moment, and then the mystery reveals itself and you get to have an epiphany. And so this is the liminal, the etheric, the hidden, the energetic. And why I find this to be such an interesting part of the learning and transformation experience is that when I say we wouldn't want it any other way, I deeply believe that that's the whole point of being here. If we knew it all, there'd be nothing to learn. It wouldn't be enjoyable. It wouldn't be interesting. And I think it's part of the practice, right? And you get to understand that learning becomes more nuanced on a level where you have to make mental leaps. And that's when the game really begins, because you make these mental leaps and you trust the intel you already have. And that's the birthing ground, the most fertile ground for all of the newness that comes in. Anything that's outside of programming, habit, well-worn bike paths, like anything that comes to us outside of that is grown in that fertile space. This is, the dark abyss where everything is, and you scoop your hand down in it, and when you pull something up, it's brilliance, it's newness, it's original, right? I know some people think that we don't have the capability to have an original thought or an original piece of music or original, like everything's been done. But I do believe that if you want something new, you have to go to that space, and you have to be comfortable in that space, and you have to suspend expectation, judgment, needing to know, language, label, structure for a moment to be able to scoop into that space. And it's the hand of your internal guidance. And it's so crazy because on this journey, deprogramming feels absolutely nuts. Do you know what I mean? It feels nuts sometimes. It's hard. It's alienating. But when you come to that idea, as I mentioned last episode, that you are the captain, you remember that you're the captain. You release the external authority and you take the hand of the internal guidance, which takes so much confidence and so much knowingness that it is okay to let go of what the culture says is the way you have to do it, and suspend all of that for a moment to bring and birth in the new. Our geniuses really had to do that. They really did have to suspend what was happening around them and hold it back long enough so that they could really bring forth something truly, truly original and new. And this is the internal guidance. And in the beginning, it feels really crazy to trust, and you really have to know yourself. And this is the process of getting to know yourself, right? And this is this whole idea of intel and practice, intelligence. Intelligence isn't just about information. It's the balance of information in practice, information in wisdom, information converted to wisdom by being embodied, by practiced, by having the confidence to practice the information that we've taken in, right? It's the praxis. This was in university, my favorite word, praxis, like the layered experience of taking knowledge, practicing it, building new knowledge from that, layering that in, bringing in more new knowledge, practicing that as well. And just like the compounding coalescence of information that creates this completely new understanding and this new wisdom. And that's when, like, that whole practice to me is coming to terms with the fact that it's 50-50, you and the universe. This is the great partnership. You must come with yourself, the you, your idea, to material. It requires the shift of letting go. You're letting go of your hold on what is known for the moment to birth what's next, to birth what you're meant to bring in, to create the new. And you have to release some of the old structure to be able to do that. And again, this is where I think we're headed in terms of our collective, right? There's this understanding of deep respect for the collective experience and for our communities and this communal intelligence we have, while partnering this with individuation, which is what we've been attempting to gather for the last however long, is to really feel into this individuation. And coming from Canada, we have this idea of what our culture was meant to look like. We didn't have many identifiers of what it meant to be Canadian. Like, there wasn't, what we thought was our national identity was very, at times, like, precarious. But we did understand that we were a mosaic, not necessarily a melting pot. Nothing was being melted down into this one thing. It was more of a mosaic where everything retained its individual parts, like a tapestry. And I really like that idea because it means that we retain this individuality, like a mandala versus, like, imagine a painting and you have several colors that you're trying to weave together. And if you keep churning and turning and turning, eventually you just get brown. You mix all the colors together and you get brown, right? So it's this idea of keeping everything's a certain amount of individual structure while weaving together this collective experience. And that individual structure really only holds its integrity if we have appropriate boundaries and appreciation for the individuation, the individual themselves. And where that comes in, like, a healthy society, is that we trust that people have a common healthy respect for humanity, a common healthy respect for everyone's well-being, but not at the expense of becoming washed with a certain bot idea that we're all kind of the same in one sense. So we are the same. We are one. We're all connected. As mentioned in the last episode, we're connected through this grander fabric. It's like droplets in the sea, but somehow we're able to maintain. If we left the sea and became snow, we'd have our own individualized, crystallized design. And like these cliche ways of describing humanity and ways of describing our individuality are actually really profound when you think about it. Like, snowflakes retaining their individual crystallized form. And so I like this idea of, like, knowing that you need to create this individualized self that's very stable, that holds this etheric blueprint of who you are, what your essence is, when you're at your best and you're just, having the best time shining and enjoying your life, and you have so much energy for yourself that it's overflowing, and you have enough to give to those around you, and you appreciate those around you, and you're just absolutely, utterly grateful. Like, those moments, if everybody was shining in that way and came together, can you imagine what our experience, our life would feel like? This is giving me a podcast idea. So I want to say that there comes a point in the transformational journey that you really lean into and get to feel excited about the aspect that is unknown, about the leaps that you will take, about the fact that you get to partner and bring your own pizzazz, if you will, to the creative process. This is your cause that matches the effect that happens, and the effect is almost like the one step ahead that informs your next step in the dance moves. It's, even though it's logically feels like it comes after, it does, but it informs your next step. And if you think of it like this dance, it's a little easier to release the clench, the clenched teeth, the grip the general, like, release the fear around, if I let go, what's going to happen? Because I promise you, the more you start to release that and let go, we find that it's perfect. Whatever happens is perfect. We can handle whatever happens. Everything, the whole gamut of experience, even what we've deemed to be undesirable, the death of a loved one, the parting, the moving away of a loved one. This part of the transformation journey is so interesting to me because, as I said earlier, it requires a profound amount of self-trust. It requires a letting go of the programs, ideas, expectations, the consciousness that got us to the point to where we are now. And it requires a trusting in the next level, the next iteration, the next version of who we are becoming. And there's that hitch moment, that bum off the seat moment, where we really just have to cross our fingers and trust in the experience that awaits us. And again, I understand that when we are in survival mode, this is like a scary experience. This is a moment of like, I can't even think of that. I can't even account for that. I don't have space for that. But we get through it. We always do. And when we look back at our experience, there are multiple and numerous examples of where we've leaned into this. Think of every time you jump in the water, especially if it's a natural body of water that you're not really sure of the temperature. It's not necessarily regulated. Every time, that moment you're in the air before you hit the water, that's that moment. And you start to savor it. This winter, my husband and I have been going in the sauna and cutting a hole in the ice and going in the water. And it's been incredible somatic training of embodiment, of accepting, appreciating, and actually craving this experience of going in the cold water, of the sort of shock to the system, this allowable shock that is anticipated. And I know I'm able to take it on. Right? So I know we have the capacity for this. And this is where I see this concept of intentional conscious evolution. This is when you can look at this jump and say, I'm ready for it. I'm excited for it. Because sure, in your memory, you will find times where life has sort of pushed you to the edge of the diving board and pushed you off the end of it. And it was less intentional. And in the moment you had to gather yourself. And sometimes I've even done that to myself, like pushed myself in over my head and like forced myself to figure it out, right? To swim, sink or swim. But it becomes so much more of a dance, smooth, exciting, still unknowing, but really satisfying when you can partner with it and take the hand of it. And take the hand that's inside you, waiting to really experience life with you. This internal guidance system that says, are you ready? I've got some twists and turns for you. I've got some fun in store if you're willing to trust and you're willing to take my hand and you're willing to follow intuitive hits and guidance around where to go next. This is like setting out for a Sunday drive, getting lost and just being excited about wherever you end up. And you end up at this cute little restaurant where you sit on the patio of it and enjoy the sun, and some epiphanies come to you that you wouldn't otherwise experience or have. And life meets you at your feet and delights you. It wows you. This is like on a quiet evening when I have stuff to do, but I decide to go out to the end of my dock and sit there. And just in stillness, the barn swallows come and they dance in front of me. And I swear, I tell my husband every time, they're putting on a show. They're doing this for me, and not in a egoic sense, but just they are delighted that I am delighted by them, and our energy coalesces and they swoop around me and they chirp and they fly together in synchronous. And it is the most magnificent, simple thing for me to behold. And that's that moment, right? That's where it's mimicked in nature. I would say that's the supernatural, but it's absolutely, utterly organic and natural. for this to happen. And this is where it could sound new agey, but I believe that magic and miracles and moments like that are actually abundant in nature. They happen all the time. It's just sometimes we're distracted, and the pace of life and the need to know gets in the way of us being able to perceive this incredible splendor that is in front of us. So if that gives anybody hope or brings you to a place of feeling like, yes, I can handle it. I can handle everything that comes at me, because I do believe and I do want that experience of sinking my teeth into life and enjoying it in a ferocious yet, satiated way, in a really beautiful, exciting way. I think it's available for everybody. I know it's available for everybody. This is our birthright. This is why we're here. We've lost track of it, but this is exactly, the point. The point isn't just to be scraping our way through, white knuckling it in survival. The purpose is to be here and allow the majesty of what is to be painted on a canvas in front of us in real time, if we have eyes to see and ears to hear. So thank you for joining me. Next week, we'll be talking about transformation in terms of the breakdown and the rebuild. And I'm glad we got to talk this week about this hitch point of trust, and really leaning into that trust and knowing that we're going to be okay, and that overall life is truly a gift. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you connecting with me, connecting with my energy, and allowing it to activate you, or just having it play in the background. Whatever it is, I'm grateful. Thank you very much.